Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shill test, lice, hearts, and vassals, neocons, think tankers. I'm a useful idiot, and today I want to talk about an extremely interesting study done in 1996. This was at the advent of the Netanyahu regime in Israel, and this was written up by a bunch of neocons and Zionists. And it's a really interesting document. The Institute for Advanced Strategic and Political Studies created this report, and some of the big characters that are involved in it are Richard Perla, who of course is a icon in the Neocon community, and then James Colbert, and Doug Feith, who could forget him, and all ended up serving in the Bush administration. But this is in 1996. This is very telling. So this is nearly 20 years ago. And this report was called the Study Group on a New Israeli Strategy Towards 2000, a Clean Break, a New Strategy for Securing the Realm. And it is fascinating, to say the least. So bear with me. This will probably be a long video because there's a lot to say about this document. And it will make very clear that what is happening in the Middle East right now, particularly with Syria, has been on the drawing board for 20 years. And I've done other videos about the blueprints for a lot of these events we're seeing in North Africa and the Middle East have been laid quite some time ago. And in fact, the Richard Clark, the Wesley Clark list was back from the 90s, and that had 7 regimes that were going to be changed. And they are certainly all being changed before our eyes. But let's get to the report. It's really interesting. First of all, it says, Israel has a problem. Efforts to salvage Israel's socialist institutions, which include pursuing supranational over national sovereignty and pursuing the peace process under the slogan, A New Middle East, undermine the legitimacy of the nation and lead Israel to strategic paralysis. So anyway, this is a break with the past, as they're calling it, a clean break, where they want to get away from the strategy that Israel was using in the region and move to a different strategy. So let's get to the gruesome details, and I'm sure right off the bat it will become apparent. This is a blueprint for what Israel and Netanyahu and the United States and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and all the other bad actors involved in the situation have had this blueprint and have adopted it. And so what we have is point 1, work closely with Turkey and Jordan to contain, destabilize, and roll back some of its most dangerous threats. This implies a clean break from the slogan, comprehensive peace, to a traditional concept of strategy based on a balance of power. So in other words, exactly what we have seen unfold in the Middle East was a strategy adopted, working with Turkey and Jordan. And so to contain, destabilize, and roll back some of its most dangerous threats, which of course at that time, in 1996, included Iraq and Syria. So, and then to say a clean break from the slogan comprehensive peace to a traditional concept of a strategy based on balance of powers is realizing that they're not necessarily going to be able to bring all those countries in the region to the peace table and recognize Israel's existence. What they could do is basically adopt the policy that the United States have, that the state of Israel will be so heavily armed that no one would dare challenge them. And it's been clear in a lot of American documents that that is the strategy to give that undeniable military edge. That's the same concept that we find in American strategy at this time. So, point 2, change the nature of its relations with the Palestinians, including upholding the right of hot pursuit for self-defense into all Palestinian areas and nurturing alternatives to Arafat's exclusive grip on Palestinian society. Now, of course, in 1996 this was written, and since then, his exclusive grip was, of course, taken away. Now we have a split state of Palestine, and also when this document talks about changing the nature of its relations with the Palestinians, including hot pursuit, and that's the strategy, the aggressive strategy we've seen from Israel in the last 20 years is that anytime something happens where they are provoked or there are rockets fired from Palestine, they will retaliate and go into hot pursuit in Palestinian territory to retaliate. So that's both point 1 and 2. Now we've seen ample evidence in the last 20 years. So number 3, forge a new basis for relations with the United States, stressing self-reliance, maturity, strategic cooperation on areas of mutual concern, and furthering Western values. This can only be done if Israel takes serious steps to terminate foreign aid, which prevents economic reform. And of course they have reduced their foreign aid, but they've increased their military aid, and they don't consider military aid part of the foreign aid. So go figure with that. But anyway, their economy is doing better, and so they're stressing more self-reliance. Of course, they act in accordance with their own needs in the Middle East, and that's their idea of showing self-reliance and maturity. And then the document goes on to point out that the, quote, land for peace, unquote, strategy placed Israel in the position of cultural, economic, diplomatic, and military retreat. So the Israelis considered the original ideas of trading land for peace as weakness, and that it was exploited. And there's probably some truth to that, but considering the situation, that's a moot point. So the document goes on to talk about the details that will really drive it home now, that the blueprint for Syria has been in place for 20 years, and that's the idea of securing their north border. Israel's interested in securing their north border, the one next to Syria. So the Syrian challenge has to be either neutered or eliminated. And this document spells it out. Syria challenges Israel on Lebanese soil. An effective approach, and one the U.S. would approve, would be if Israel seized the strategic initiative along its north border by engaging Hezbollah, Syria, and Iran. So that's the policy we see being enacted now. And the points they brought up about achieving that goal are: 1, striking Syria's drug money in Lebanon and their counterfeiting operations. Number 2, paralleling Syria's behavior by establishing the precedent that Syrian territory is not immune to attacks emanating from Lebanon by Israeli proxy forces. So this is where it really gets interesting. So paralleling Syria's behavior. So they're saying basically that Syria operates a proxy army in Lebanon called Hezbollah, and therefore Israel would also create its own proxy forces to operate against Syria. We're seeing that now for sure. And point 3, striking Syrian military targets in Lebanon or striking at select targets in Syria proper, which is also what we've seen in the last several months. Striking Syrian military targets in Lebanon or striking at select targets in Syria proper. So this entire paper is looking like a blueprint for certainly what we are seeing right now. And it goes on to say Israel can shape its strategic environment in cooperation with Turkey and Jordan by weakening, containing, and even rolling back Syria. This effort can focus on removing Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq, an important Israeli strategic objective in its own right as a means of foiling Syria's regional ambitions. So once again, how interesting is that? This document was prepared in 1996. Then the Bush administration comes into power in 2000, and then we have the Israeli strategic objective being the removal of Saddam Hussein. So we have the World Trade Center attack, and then we take care of one of Israel's strategic objectives, which is taking care of Iraq, and now we're taking care of Syria, as per this blueprint, as per exactly what Israel wants. So more evidence that our foreign policy has been completely captured by the state of Israel. And the fact that we took care of Iraq for them, and certainly they posed no threat to the United States. And this goes on to say, most important, it is understandable that Israel has an interest supporting diplomatically, militarily, and operationally Turkey and Jordan's actions against Syria, such as securing alliances with Arab tribes that cross into Syrian territory and are hostile to the Syrian government. So once again, an exact blueprint 20 years ago for what we see now, that Israel would be supporting Syrian opposition inside Jordan and Turkey. Exactly what we're seeing for actions against Syria and using alliances with Arab tribes and use them as useful idiots. And that includes Al-Qaeda and that are hostile to the Syrian government. So that's exactly what we have. So this blueprint lays out the fact that Israel is hiring Al-Qaeda as useful idiots to be used in Syria and securing alliances with Arab tribes is how they put it in this. And this document also lays out actual speech text points. So it actually provides written talking points to be delivered in speeches by Netanyahu and his spokesman. And here's just one example. Quote, "We believe that the Palestinian Authority must be held to the same minimal standards of accountability as other recipients of U.S. foreign aid. A firm peace cannot tolerate repression and injustice. A regime that cannot fulfill the most rudimentary obligations to its own people cannot be counted upon to fulfill its obligations to its neighbors," unquote. So what a bunch of sanctimonious revisionism, because, of course, one of the reasons why Palestine can't take care of its rudimentary obligations to its own people is because of the Israeli occupation and containment. And also the idea that Israel would criticize Palestine for not having a commitment about repression and injustice. But that's another topic. But how interesting that even speech talking points are spelled out in this document. And this is very telling too, and I'll be wrapping this up soon. And that's the fact they talk about the missile defense system. And of course now we see the Iron Dome system. Here it is 20 years later, and the Iron Dome missile defense system is in place and is a huge part of U.S. foreign aid to Israel. And in this document it says, not only would such cooperation on missile defense counter a tangible physical threat to Israel's survival, but it would broaden Israel's base of support among many in the U.S. Congress who may know little about Israel but care very much about missile defense. So basically what that's saying is that through missile defense to Israel, they can interest even those who aren't overtly supporting Israel but have missile defense military contracting going on in their states. And of course, they love that. So you can get them in their pocketbooks with more military hardware. And then lastly, it says, to anticipate U.S. reactions and plan ways to manage and constrain the reactions, Israel can formulate the policies and stress themes favored in language familiar to Americans by tapping into the American administration's language used during the Cold War. So this document actually spells out that they're going to adopt the same kind of rhetoric that the United States used with propaganda during the Cold War in order to appeal to American sensibilities. So how crass and cynical is that? But I'm sure effective. So there we have it. What a fascinating document. Once again, I'll include a link, but it's the Institute for Advanced Strategic and Political Studies, a Neocon think tank with a bunch of people who ended up being advisors in the Bush administration and carrying out these policies, as well as the incoming Netanyahu regime in Israel. So the neocons and the Netanyahu regime walked hand in hand into office and had a similar agenda. And another topic for another day is how this all ties in with what exactly would the real motivations be behind 9/11 and those characters involved and how it affects, say, a blueprint like this one. So I'll just leave that for speculation, and many out there will know what I'm hinting at. And there we have it, a study group on a new Israeli strategic policy towards the year 2000, a clean break, a new strategy for securing the realm. And this document was written in 1999.